First, I'm going to show you a video clip.
You're impossibly fast and strong. Your skin is pale white and ice cold. Your eyes change color. And sometimes you speak like you're from a different time. You never eat or drink anything. You don't go out in the sunlight. How old are you?
17.
How long have you been 17?
A while.
I know what you are.
See it. Out loud. Say it.
Vampire.
Give me a moment to catch my breath. Bella Swan was no expert on vampires, but even she had some prior knowledge about them. So I want to know, and this is not a rhetorical question, I'd like to know what you guys know about vampires. What can you tell me? What can they do or not do? Anything?
They can't go out in the sun.
Can't go out in sunlight. What happens to them, do you know?
Skin. What happens?
They glow.
They glow, they sparkle,
They dissolve.
they dissolve. Anything else? They burn.
They can only be killed by a cross or a stake.
They are repelled by a cross. They can be killed with a wooden stake.
They can only enter the way if you invite them in, right?
Only enter if they're invited.
They can't see the reflection.
Can't see the reflection.
Not a fan of garlic.
They don't like garlic.
Have fangs.
They have fangs.
They drink blood.
They drink blood. Okay, vampire folklore dates all the way back to the very beginnings of civilization. And over centuries, the vampire's reputation and role in our historical and literary fabric has evolved considerably. From the bloodthirsty, undead, nocturnal predator of Eastern European lore, to a purple counting puppet popularized by Sesame Street, to a family of devastatingly attractive vampire vegetarians from the famous Twilight series. This creature's become such an iconic figure in our pop culture that I can ask any number of you what you already know about vampires, and you're able to share a wealth of information about a creature that scientists would have us believe doesn't even exist. And I'm not here to argue that supernatural vampires, as we've come to know them from fiction and folklore, do exist. However, vampirism is alive and well as a modern subculture, and I'm going to briefly explain the various types of vampirism that are practiced today. Well, first you need to understand what it means, and I need to define vampirism, and that's simply an action or practice of a vampire. Well, you need to understand what a vampire really is. So what is a vampire? In specific terms, you can define a vampire as a dead person who leaves their grave at night, who feeds on the blood of living victims as they sleep. But a more general definition of vampire can be one who lives by preying on others, no matter what they're preying, or what they're using to prey on them. So now that you understand what vampirism and vampire is, I want to talk to you about the vampire subculture. And generally, when it comes to vampirism, it's not considered a religious thing or a religion in itself, but it has more to do with a spiritual and or philosophical path that a person wants to take. Modern members of a vampire subculture exist in small groups that are called covens or clans or even houses. And there are two main types of vampire lifestyles. One is sanguinarians and the other is called psychic vampire. Sanguinarians consider themselves vampires because they drink blood, and they consider themselves real vampires because they do actually practice it. They believe that they have to have physical and spiritual, or that they do have a physical and spiritual need to live off the blood of other living things. They prefer human blood, but some sanguinarian vampires will even drink animal blood instead, just because I think of the ease of access to get said blood. But they think they need this to maintain optimal health, believe it or not. And mostly sanguinarian vampires, even though they drink blood, preferably of humans, they are non-threatening people. They use willing participants, willing donors. And what I found interesting is that there are actually websites that exist simply for people who practice sanguinarian vampirism to find willing donors to give them blood to feed off of. And one of the sites is called Sanguinarians 5.0 for real vampires. And it not only gives them news announcements and different events and ways to keep in touch with each other, vampire chat, but down in the side column you can find links to ways to find blood donors specifically for their purpose. And another one, click on the next one, the Vampire/Donor Alliance, which is set up more like a chat space for people to connect and exchange goods and services, if you will. And then the other one, the Real Vampire website, Getting Blood Made Easy. So these are just 3, but there are many, many websites out there that exist simply for people who want to practice sanguinarian vampirism. The next subculture that I mentioned, psychic vampires. These people claim to gain their nourishment from someone's aura or their psychic energy, or what's also referred to as pranic energy. So they're not drinking someone's blood, but they are stealing that person's life force. And they feel like they need to feed on a person's energy in order to find a balance between their spiritual and physiological self. And oftentimes what you'll find is a person who claims to practice psychic vampirism is someone who perhaps has had a long history of physical ailments, illnesses, and defects. And they claim that feeding off the life force of another person gives them the energy that they need for day-to-day living. I also have this excellent book. It's basically an encyclopedia of everything you would ever want to know or even not know about vampires. And I have it marked specifically on the page that discusses further in depth psychic vampirism, but you're welcome to peruse and see what all is available in that lovely book. Along with these 2 main vampire subcultures, there exist further divisions, and I chose 3, although there are a few more. First, there are hybrid vampires, and a hybrid vampire is simply someone who claims to practice both sanguinarian vampirism and psychic vampirism. There are what's known as blood fetishists, and these people use blood specifically as a sexual stimulant for sadomasochist sex. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And then the third subdivision of vampirism are vampire role players or vampire lifestylers. And these are people that sanguinarian and psychic vampires wouldn't consider to be real vampires. These are people who are simply fans of vampires for whatever reason, through movies, through literature, or both. And they just want to play the part. So they might travel the country going to different vampire parties and events dressed as different vampiric sort of creatures. And they may even sleep in coffins. They may go so far as to have fake fangs made to fit their mouths. All to have fun and just play the part because they enjoy that culture. But they do not partake in any sort of vampiric behavior beyond that in terms of feeding off of other people in any way. And I wanted to show a website regarding those people. This is the Endless Night Vampire Ball official website. And this helps guide people to find all around the world different vampire themed parties that they can go and share with other people like them who enjoy the culture. Now that your knowledge of vampirism has expanded to include the subcultures of sanguine, psychic, hybrid, blood fetishist, and fashion vampires, I suspect one of 2 responses. Either you will add modern-day real-life vampires to ISIS, Ebola, and the rest of the growing list of things to be afraid of, Or you'll have a much easier time securing your ticket to the next Endless Night Vampire Ball. You're welcome, by the way. Whatever your feelings about vampirism, the image of the vampire is one that will continue to fascinate us. As long as we exist, so too will our wild imaginations, fears, and anxieties draw us towards the mysterious undead who prey on the living. Thank you. So what I'm going to give you is a copy of the outline that I created for the speech that you just saw. It's the same format that we've always used. I just thought it might help you in seeing how, because some of us are still putting way too much on your outline than you need. You can kind of see how, based on what you heard, how it matches up with this brief framework that I have on my paper. What you'll also find on this outline at the bottom are some reminders about the other requirements for this speech. Like your other informative speeches, the requirements are the same. 5 to 8 minutes time. You need an MLA formatted works cited page with a 5 source minimum. You need at least 2 types of visuals required. So for this I had a video clip, I had websites to show you, and I also had the Vampire Encyclopedia. So make sure that your visuals you have at least 2 and they're varied. We're going to do an outline note card check on day 1 of presentations, which is going to fall on Wednesday the 29th, which also happens to be, I think, the first day of PSATs. We have special permission to stay in this room. A lot of times during PSAT, people are just shuffled around the building, and because I'm having you guys give presentations, they were kind enough to let me keep my room that day. The only stipulation is we have to be very quiet because there are going to be testers right next to us in the next room. So just keep that in mind. I don't think it will be a problem in here, but my O2 and my O3 need to pay attention to that little fact. So that's basically what you're doing. How does this differ from your first informative and your how-to? Well, you're not demonstrating anything. What makes this unique? It's a concept that you're presenting. A concept, an idea, a theory of some kind. So Einstein's theory of relativity, feminism, conspiracy theories are also fun. Just any abstract concept or idea that you can present and explain to the class using, tangible, relatable, understandable examples. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. If it ends in ism, that's a strong indicator that it's probably applicable to a concept speech. So today you're going to go to the library and have an opportunity to do some topic searching, and I've started a topic sign-up sheet, and I encourage all of you to sign up a topic by the end of the block, and we'll be in the library for a couple days.